Okay, wait a sec. I think we're recording. Wait a minute. I need to. Yeah, we are recording. Okay. Okay, this is health class, health psychology. Um, this is the first lecture for the 23rd of March. I hope you're all staying safe and staying inside and washing your hands. Doing a good job of washing your hands. As you can see, we're on chapter 7, and it looks like I may not be able to get through the entire text for the year, but we'll cover as much as we possibly can. I'm taking up where we left off on the 4th of March. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Health psychology, this fits right in with what's going on right now, this pandemic. We've only seen a couple of these. Actually, we've seen probably hundreds and thousands of these over the lifespan of humanity. The last real pandemic that we saw was what they referred to as the Spanish flu. It was a flu that hit in 1918 and 1919. Killed 50 million people, and hopefully, of course, we won't see that many people die with this pandemic. I think we're over 300 now in the United States. There's 300,000 people that have been infected with the coronavirus, Corona 19. But most of them haven't died. I think we're in the 3,000s worldwide right now. New York has almost 10,000 cases of New York City, especially, has has a lot of people that are affected. So let's go ahead and get started. This is chapter 7, slide number 84. We're talking about sleep deprivation and how sleeping can bother you. This is something that we need to think about as we're sitting at home doing not a whole lot. How many naps are we taking during the day? How well are we sleeping at night? And one of the things that we need to know is that when you are sleep deprived, if you have insomnia or you're spending all day and all night playing video games or whatever you're doing, this can really affect your health. And there's a reason for that. You need to keep your immune system as strong as you possibly can. There are various ways that you can do this. One is to consume vitamin C and vitamin E. The other is to get an adequate amount of sleep. Now the question is, how much is an adequate amount? And normally we think of between 7 and 8 hours as an adequate amount. There's a problem with getting too much sleep. It causes as many problems as not getting enough sleep. So we're going to talk about that right now, sleep deprivation. And we know that it suppresses the immune functioning of your body. You need to keep your immune system as strong as you possibly can, especially right now when we're trying to fight off a virus that we have. This is an old virus. It's not like we have never seen this virus before. We just haven't seen it in this mutation, number 19. Of course, if this thing really goes south and COVID-19 mutates into another form that is a more virulent form, then that might be a problem. That we need to maintain the social distancing and are trying to maintain your immune system as much as possible. There's a reason why it causes immunological problems. It increases the immunological signaling molecules such as tumor necrosis factor and interleukin-1 and interleukin-6. It elevates levels of these cytokines, is associated with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, inflammation, pain sensitivity, and other chronic illnesses. So if you've got pain and you're not getting enough sleep, then it makes you more sensitive to the pain, as strange as that is. If you're not sleeping enough hours during the night, then you're setting yourself up for diabetes, because during the night is when everything gets corrected, is when everything is healed. And so one of the things that you need to do is get enough sleep so that all these problems don't affect you. It can make your chronic illnesses worse, and this is one of the things that you need to remember. Sleep loss promotes insulin resistance. That's type 2 diabetes that we're talking about here. Insulin resistance is a key factor in diabetes, especially diabetes type 2. Fat cells in people who experience sleep restriction have a 30% reduction in their ability to respond to insulin. And this is exactly why we have so much type 2 diabetes. I can remember when I first started in medicine, we rarely saw anybody with type 2 diabetes. And now, of course, it's extremely common, especially among select populations such as American Indians and American Indians and Hispanics. And that may have something to do with the fact that American Indians and Hispanics who have a lot of American Indian ancestry, they evolved not consuming a lot of sugars, not a lot of plant fibers and whatnot, but eating a lot of meat. And because of that, of course, they're not used to all the sugar that you take in. So if you're taking in a great deal of sugar and all this is turning into fat because you're not exercising enough, then all of a sudden we have a problem with the fact that your body isn't functioning as well with the insulin, and of course the cells in your body become less sensitive to the insulin. If sleep loss is not chronic, this process will reverse itself, of course. So just because you miss a couple days of sleep, you're probably okay. The adolescent body is more flexible than the adult body, and this is the reason why kids can eat all kinds of crap and they don't develop diabetes. It isn't until later that this becomes a problem. A study found that adolescents that chronically get only 6 hours of sleep a night can increase their insulin sensitivity by 10% with just 1 extra hour of sleep. So as you can see, this is when you repair yourself and when you're asleep. And this is one of the reasons why you need to sleep as well as you possibly can. Sleep loss is linked to chronic inflammation. This adversely affects our metabolic functioning, our neural functioning, our endocrine functioning. This mimics accelerated aging. This is Lisa Robin Kelly, of course. She was on the 70s show. When she started on the 70s show, she was in her 20s. This is what she looked like just before she died. She was in rehab, and as you can see, she aged very rapidly. Older adults who do not have sleep problems live longer than those who do have sleep problems. So this is something that I need to think about. I'm 70 years old, and I'm sleeping between 6 and 7 hours a night, and that's okay for me. That's good. I'm staying fairly healthy. I'm not having a problem with inflammation. I'm not having a problem with losing weight. I've just recently decided that I was drinking too much soda or pop, so I've cut back. As a matter of fact, I haven't had any pop to drink for 2 days now, and I'm fine. Obviously, and I've lost 2 pounds. I've lost 2 pounds, which is kind of interesting. I was consuming too much sugar, but of course, I'm of a different genetic structure than you guys are. So because I'm a European, and because Europeans evolved eating a lot of vegetable matter, which has a lot of fructose in it, I am more attuned to dealing with sugar. My body can deal with it a little bit easier than somebody who evolved eating primarily meat, and of course that's one of the interesting things, differences between some people of European ancestry and people of native ancestry. Sleep is used by the brain to repair damage, to replenish energy stores, to promote neurogenesis. Poor sleep can lead to impaired concentration, impaired memory, impaired creativity, increased reaction time, increased errors, and increased accidents. Driver fatigue was blamed on 20% of the traffic accidents in 2019 in the United States. So how do you improve your sleep? One of the ways to do it is to avoid all forms of caffeine close to bedtime. Stay away from coffee, stay away from tea. It's got lots and lots of caffeine in it. Soft drinks, of course, most soft drinks have caffeine in them. Most soft drinks have caffeine injected into them. You can drink clear liquids, I think, clear pop like 7-Up or Sprite. But stay away from the colas. Chocolate, of course, has a lot of caffeine in it, and so does nicotine. So you need to stop smoking if you're a smoker, and stay away from nicotine. Exercise regularly it's good for you, but one of the things that you shouldn't do, you shouldn't work out after 3 hours before you go to sleep. You need to stop your exercise regimen. In other words, if you exercise just before you go to bed, potentially you're accelerating your heart rate, and you will have a hard time going to sleep. May cause insomnia. Establish a consistent schedule and relaxing bedtime routine. Take a bath maybe, and relax yourself, or relax with a good book before you go to sleep. If you watch old movies, this is what everyone seemed to be doing in the 40s and 50s. They would go to sleep, they would go to bed, and they would read before they went to sleep. Of course, if you're reading your textbook, it'll probably put you to sleep in a nanosecond. That's just the way boring things put you to sleep. If they're exciting things, maybe they'll keep you awake. Avoid alcohol. It can lead to disrupted sleep. Not a good idea. As you can see, people who drink, they go into a deeper sleep, but they go into a deeper sleep, but then they have a hard time staying asleep. They can only sleep for 4 or 5 hours. This is one of the things that we learned after Vietnam. We had a lot of returning soldiers who were drinking themselves to sleep at night, and of course they only slept for 4 or 5 hours, and of course it didn't really work very well, and a lot of those individuals ended up aging very rapidly. Some of those individuals committed suicide. A lot of strange things. If you don't do everything naturally, if you try to use medication to help yourself, even sleeping pills, of course, can cause problems. Create a sleep-conducive environment that is dark, it's quiet, it's cool, not hot. A lot of people like to turn the heat up in their rooms, but that's not really a very good idea. My mother and father used to sleep in an unheated room, in an unheated bedroom. And of course, they did that for a couple different reasons. But my mother was a nurse, and she knew that if you slept in a cold room, that you would live longer, as weird as that may sound. Hide the clock face. Reassure yourself that occasional temporary sleep loss causes no great harm, and it doesn't. If you have a hard time falling asleep, or you don't sleep one night because you're worried about something, you're not going to immediately get sick from from having a bad night's sleep. You can recover from that. And of course your body will try to recover from that immediately, and by the next night you're fine. And now we're going to talk about injuries. In 2010, 180,811 U.S. citizens died from injuries. They died from car crashes, from poisoning, from firearms, and from falling down, as odd as that may seem. There's a U.S. congressman from California that tripped while he was running, while he was jogging, and he injured his ribs. And because he injured his ribs, he's not breathing very deeply. And since he's not breathing very deeply, he's developed pneumonia because when you breathe, you need to expel as much fluid as you possibly can. Well, he was breathing too shallowly, and he got a buildup of fluid in his lungs that developed into pneumonia, and now he's in critical condition. He's only 67 years old, but he fell, injured his ribs, and because he injured his ribs, he couldn't breathe very deeply, and now he has pneumonia, and he'll probably die. When I first started in medicine back in the 1970s, they used to call pneumonia the great equalizer. Most people died of pneumonia. Despite the fact that we were fighting all these diseases, they really didn't die from anything else. They developed pneumonia and then they died. If they had a cardiovascular disease, they didn't die of a heart attack. They died of pneumonia after having a heart attack. They would die of pneumonia. As weird as that may sound. 120,859 of these deaths were classified as unintentional deaths. So that gives you, what, 60,000? Oh, yeah. Just under 60,000 deaths were due to intentional injuries. Either they were murdered, they committed suicide, or they died in a war. And this is in 2010. I think we lost, what, 2,000 men and women, 2,000 military personnel that year in the wars that we were fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. In 2010, 3 million U.S. citizens were hospitalized for non-fatal injuries. 30 million people were treated in emergency rooms for injuries from accidents. With people between the ages of 1 to 44, accidents are the leading cause of death. And of course, if you've been keeping up with what's going on with the coronavirus, we're having a problem. What we need to do is we need to make sure that our medical personnel are taken care of, that they're covered, that they're not coming in contact with the coronavirus. But of course, we're having a hard time with gloves. We're having a hard time with masks because we don't have enough, and this is a recurring problem. Well, as you can see, if 30 million people are treated in emergency rooms for injuries from accidents, of course, they have to protect themselves from those 30 million people. And we'll see what happens. This is really irritating as far as I'm concerned, because working in medicine, I know how important it is for you to protect yourself from your patients if your patients have one kind of disease or another. We had a case when I was working in rural healthcare in Oklahoma. We had an individual that came in, and he had, it was feared that he had tuberculosis. If he had tuberculosis, of course, when he came into our clinic, we had no idea that he might potentially have tuberculosis. So we weren't really protecting ourselves from him as much. And of course, this is back in the 90s. When you did wear gloves, but you certainly didn't wear disposable gowns with every patient. And of course, they thought maybe he had tuberculosis. He was an alcoholic, and he died of just about everything you can possibly imagine. His lungs had filled up with fluid, and they thought it was tuberculosis. But when they cultured it, they couldn't get any growth out of it, so they assumed it wasn't tuberculosis. Obviously, that was back in 1993. That was back in 1993, and I'm still here, and I don't have tuberculosis. I've been tested for tuberculosis buku times, so I obviously don't have it. Among people 1 to 24, the leading cause of death is accidents, 38%. All other causes, 26%. Suicides, 13%. Homicides, 13%. Cancer, 7%. For people 25 to 44, the leading causes of death are all other causes, 32%, accidents, 26%, cancers, 13%, heart disease, 12%, suicides, 11%, homicides, 6%. So as you can see, homicides have gone down 7% from crazy teenagers who do a lot of really weird things. For children between 1 and 4, the leading cause of injury-related death is drowning and motor vehicle accidents. For children between 5 and 9, the leading injury-related death is motor vehicle accidents, 50%, burns from fire, 14%, and then drowning, 12.6%. Leading cause of death for adolescents is motor vehicle accidents at a rate of 51.1%. And it's because, well, there's a lot of different reasons, and we'll talk about them right now. This is true despite adolescent drivers having exceptional reflexes. The main reason is because they drive too fast. The other reason is because they're dumb as dirt and they drink and then they drive, as stupid as that sounds. And they also, of course, now we're especially having problems with people who are trying to text and drive at the same time. They think that nothing can ever happen to them. And a good example of that is what's happening down on the spring break beaches of Florida and North and South Carolina. They're packed with kids. They're packed with college kids. They're packed with post-adolescents, people between the ages of, hopefully, they're between the ages of 18 and 22, 23, 24. And the reason is because they have been told from the research looking at what people that have died in China that they are less susceptible to the coronavirus. So they figure that even if they get it, it's not going to hurt them. But the reality, of course, is that not only will it hurt them, this is an actual scene, by the way. This is a mock-up. Don't think that young lady's dead. Of course, she's got a blanket that she's got a blanket that she's laying on. That always flies through the window before you fly through and kill yourself. Now that she's not dead. But these individuals think that they're immune to any problems, and that's why they speed, and that's why they drink alcohol. You know, this is never going to happen to me. It always happens to somebody else. It's never going to happen to me. And that's what's going on with the coronavirus. Of course, the problem is that those kids are going to come back from spring break, and they're going to be contaminated. Florida has, my kids are both down in Florida. I call them kids. My son is 48, and my daughter's 50, and they're both down in Florida right now, not to go to spring break. My son lives down there, and my daughter used to live there, and her baby daddy lives down there, and so she had to take him down there for spring break. Well, they have 757 cases. 11 people have died in Florida, so it's not the safest place in the world to be. A lot of these kids are going to come back from spring break contaminated with coronavirus. They may be asymptomatic, of course, but they still have the disease, and they are contagious. One reason for adolescent poor impulse control and decision making is because the two parts of their brain that control impulse control and decision making mature at different rates. The amygdala and the limbic system mature faster than the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala controls fear and excitement, and of course they're not afraid enough, and they're overly excited, and this is why they do stupid things like drive too fast, drink when they drive, think that they're invulnerable. They're not, of course. Obviously, they're not, because a lot of adolescents die from these problems. Teens are more likely than older drivers to underestimate dangerous situations or to be unable to recognize hazardous situations. As you can see, this young lady, one young lady is putting on her makeup while she's driving, and the other one is reacting to her stupidity by trying to steer the car. Teens are more likely to speed and to tailgate than older drivers. If there are male passengers, then risky behavior increases. Males tend to challenge each other. Oh, you know, you're going too slow. What's wrong with you? Get around this driver. You know, that kind of stupid stuff. Teens have the lowest rate of seatbelt use of any age group. Of all drivers, teens are the most likely to drink and drive. Preventive measures to reduce adolescent motor vehicle accidents. Longer time between learner's permit and a full license. As you can see, these three individuals are trying to talk this other kid into drinking his Coke and driving faster than he probably should. Restricted driving at night. That's usually when they have accidents. Not allow them to have teenage passengers. This makes a lot of sense since they goad each other into doing stupid things. Zero tolerance for driving under the influence, of course. For one thing, it's against the law for them to be drinking alcohol anyway. And of course, if they do get caught with a DWI, they need to have their license revoked and not allow them to drive until, of course, they can legally drink and at that point you can give them back their license. Accidents are still the leading cause of death for adults until they reach the age of 45. By age 65, accidents have dropped to the 9th leading cause of death. So I don't really have to worry about automobile accidents like you guys do because, well, I've been driving for, how long have I been driving? I've been driving for 54, 55 years. So I've got a little bit of experience. I know what I'm doing. Auto accidents are the leading injury-related death for people 24 to 35. Between 35 and 54, poisoning is the leading injury-related death. As your reflexes slow, car accidents once again become the leading injury-related death for people 55 to 64. And of course, when you get as old as I am, of course, my reflexes aren't nearly what they used to be. I hope they are because I used to pitch slow pitch softball, and I played against a team one time that everything came right up the middle. So they were trying to knock me out of the box. I was about 60 at the time. I was able to fend everything off, and we defeated a team that had only lost 4 times that year, and we defeated them in the playoffs, which was a real surprise to them. Because they tried to knock everything past me. Of course, I'm an old man, and I shouldn't have been able to field all those shots up the middle, but I did somehow. I guess my reflexes are a little bit better than they're supposed to be. 87 people die every day from unintentional poisoning. 2,277 people are treated every day in ERs for unintentional poisoning. 91% of the unintentional poisoning involves drugs. 91%. Most of them have to do with prescription drugs. People that can't remember whether they took something and then they take an extra dose, and of course that becomes a lethal dose. Prescription painkillers such as hydrocodone, OxyContin, and methadone, cocaine, which is an illegal drug, heroin, of course, a legal drug, but benzodiazepines like Valium, of course, that's a legal drug as well. American Indians have the highest poisoning rates, followed by European Americans. That may have something to do with suicide. We'll talk about suicide in just a moment. Homicides. In 2010, there were 16,259 homicides in the United States, with 68.1% involving firearms. That's 11,078 homicides because of firearms. In 2019, there were 15,292 firearm deaths in the United States, and that excludes suicides. So there were a lot more homicides in 2019. White males who die by gunfire are more likely to die in a rural area from suicide. Black males who die from gunfire are more likely to die in an urban area from homicide. So as you can see, if you're black, you need to stay out of the city, and if you're white, you need to stay out of the country, I guess, or you'll kill yourself. If you're a black male, then there are people out there gunning for you, I guess. In 2016, there were 17,250 homicides in the United States. The number of homicides per 100,000 people in the United States is 4.7. The most dangerous state in the United States by per capita murders is Louisiana. So there you go. Stay away from New Orleans at night. Stay away from New Orleans. 11.8 per 100,000. If you want to be safe from homicide, then the place to go is New Hampshire. They have only 1.7 murders per 100,000 people. 74% of people were murdered by firearms, and this is something else that you need to think about as far as firearms are concerned. 39% of U.S. households have firearms, so there is a danger there just because the gun is in the house. Males are 7 times more likely to die by homicide than females. For every white male murdered, 5 commit suicide. For every black male who commits suicide, 5 are killed by homicide. Of course, the one thing that you need to remember is that the rate of suicide for white people is much higher than it is for blacks, for African Americans. The age group that is the most likely to commit suicide are people between 45 and 54. People from Europe are about half as likely to commit suicide as people from the United States, Canada, and Australia, which seems kind of weird. Europeans don't kill themselves, but European American, European Canadians, and European Australians do kill themselves. 80% of all suicide attempts are by females, but 80% of the completed suicides are by males. And that's because males use a more lethal means. Very frequently, they use firearms. Males choose firearms 55.7% of the time. Females are the most likely to use poison 40.2% of the time. In the United States, American Indians are the most likely to attempt and complete suicide. The European Americans are the second most likely at twice the level of anyone else. And those anyone else's that we're talking about are African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans. So the two most likely people in the United States to commit suicide is me and you, as weird as that sounds. You're more likely than I am, but I'm more likely than just about everybody else in the United States, as odd as that may seem. Suicide rates are the highest among wealthy people, among single people, widowed people, divorced people, depressed people, alcohol-dependent people, those that feel disconnected with society, and of course we're all disconnected right now. So I was talking to my wife yesterday. I was saying that the number of suicides in the United States because of the coronavirus will probably increase markedly. You know, it's a horrible thing to say, it's a horrible thing to happen, but I have a feeling that we're going to see more suicides. Those that feel that they are a burden to others, those that feel that they are trapped in an inescapable situation, those that feel that they have to reach an unattainable goal. Of course, they're the ones that set their goals. Among gay and lesbian youth, it may be peer rejection and an unsupportive family that causes suicide. Suicide is often an impulsive act. Thus, an important deterrent is creating environmental barriers to committing suicide. 57% of all suicides are by firearms, so locking up family firearms can be a deterrent. As you remember, earlier we said that 39% of households have weapons in their house. People who live in a home with firearms are 5 times more likely to die by suicide than in a firearm-free home. The mental health community is starting to recognize that all attempts at self-injury are not suicide attempts. Since 2011, Fick et al. And Wilkinson and Goodyear have pointed out that there are degrees of self-destruction from non-suicidal self-injury to gesturer to suicide attempter to suicide completer. And this is a picture of Wilkinson in 2011, obviously. It's the 16th of March, and he's smiling outside someplace with green, anyway. And this is Goodyear. Non-suicidal self-injury behaviors often include cutting of the skin, pulling out hair, inserting objects under the skin, administering self-tattoos. Experts point out that non-suicidal self-injury behavior may be an attempt to gain attention and ask others for help, to get others to stop bullying you, to use pain to distract persistent negative thoughts and rumination, to relieve guilt from self-punishment, and to fit in with a peer group, as weird as that may seem. Falls are the second leading cause of unintentional injury deaths worldwide. 424,000 die worldwide from falls every year. As I said, that congressman from California fell while he was running. He's 67 years old, possibly he lost his balance. As you get older, falls are far more likely. Yeah. If you drink, falls are very likely. If you smoke pot and then try to walk around, you're not very coordinated. So that makes it more likely if you're a pot smoker. Of course, if you're a user of methamphetamines, you're okay when you're on methamphetamines, but if you're a heroin user, of course, it kind of makes you fairly non-functional, and so of course, you shouldn't be walking around. But smokers, drinkers, and people that use other drugs, potentially they may have a problem with falling. Falls in the United States account for twice as many injuries as any other cause. In 2010, 2,300,000 emergency room visits were because of falls in the United States. 1 out of every 3 adults over the age of 65 falls every year. And of course, I'm 70, so I have a 1 in 3 chance of keeling over at some point. And of course, I'm okay. I haven't fallen anyway. Worldwide, the number of non-lethal falls accounts for 37,300,000 falls a year. But it isn't just older adults who fall. 2,800,000 children are treated in emergency rooms every year for falls in the United States. This is a picture on the right of my grandson. And as you can see, he fell and hit his chin and cut it open. Among older adults, 20 to 30% of the falls result in moderate to severe injuries, bruises, hip fractures, traumatic brain injuries. If you remember Sue Wolf had fallen the second year. Well, was it the second year? Yeah, it was the second year. It was the second year she was here. And unfortunately, of course, she missed a couple days of school because of the TBI that she suffered from. Oddly, that wasn't the first time she'd fallen. She also had suffered a TBI earlier in her life, as had her son. And her son, of course, has various problems still from his traumatic brain injury when he was a teenager. Even if the individual is not injured by a fall, the incident may cause the individual to limit their activities for fear of falling again. Of course, that's not a problem with my grandson. He's quite the hockey player. He loves to play basement hockey. And he's a soccer player, and he's a football player, and he's a basketball player, so it hasn't slowed him down at all. Individual behaviors that may cause problems: alcohol use, of course, texting while driving, dumbest thing in the world, taking unnecessary risks like this lady is. She's on the top of a building, and she's trying to walk around on a railing. Higher levels of risk-taking, people that have ADHD tend to do that. And a history of injury can lead to frequent injuries. And of course, that may have something to do with the ADHD. It just makes the ADHD work. Traumatic brain injury and whatnot, getting hit in the head too many times. We know that this happens with boxers, of course, that they damage their brains. Dumbest thing in the world, this guy's lifting, what's he lifting there? 135 pounds. 135 pounds while standing on a medicine ball, or not a medicine ball, but a exercise ball. Dumbest thing in the world. Physical environment, some physical environments are safer than others. You need adequate lighting, of course. There need to be smoke detectors in there so that you don't, if a fire does start, that you can escape. Fences, of course, around properties. These factors can reduce the rate of injuries related to falls, burns from fires, drowning, and violence. Access to services, access to health care services such as systems created for injury-related care can reduce the consequences of injury, including disability and death. The health care can range from acute care to rehabilitation. The social environment, as long as there's adult supervision, the kids are less likely to damage each other. Peer group associations, family interactions, school, work, neighborhood, community environments. The family environment is the most important social environment for the child and the adolescent. Dry cough. Higher levels of parental mental distress and marital conflict have been seen to predict higher rates of injury to pre-adolescents. And this usually isn't because the parents are doing anything to the child. Children become, they pay attention less if their parents are fighting, almost as if I hurt myself, then maybe my parents will stop fighting. That's the type of situation that we're looking at. A lot of times these individuals are diagnosed with ADHD, and it's not ADHD, it's a conflictual home life, unfortunately. But we'll treat them anyway and give them Ritalin, and that doesn't help anybody at all. Parental monitoring can reduce the risks of injury to children. You need to pay more attention to your kids. And actually, that's why one of the reasons why they're hurting themselves is because they're looking to get their parents to pay more attention to them. 3 levels of prevention. The primary prevention, changes in laws and other societal policies that are designed to make harm less likely for everyone. Secondary prevention is reducing the risk of injury in high-risk situations or for vulnerable individuals. And then tertiary prevention is where the prevention begins after an injury has occurred, limiting the damage. When I was in the military, of course, one of the things I was trained to do was to recognize safety hazards. And of course, I wander around campus, and if I see a safety hazard, because I've been trained in the military, one of the things that I do is try to reduce the probability of anybody being injured by that, whatever it is, piece of paper on the stairway, pencil on the stairway. You just pick it up and get rid of it. And the reason you do that is because you're responsible, and you need to make sure that the next guy that comes down that stairway doesn't trip and fall down and hurt themselves. That would be a tragedy. So we try to reduce. It's just a natural thing. I can't help myself because I was trained to do that when I was in the military. Now I look for safety hazards, unfortunately. Okay, this is, we're finished with chapter 7, so let's go ahead and start with chapter 8. Fun chapter. It's about nutrition, obesity, and eating disorders. Eating disorders, there's like 5 slides at the end, but the rest of it we're going to be talking about nutrition and obesity and how you can help yourself. Obesity is considered at epidemic proportions throughout the world. More than half the population are considered overweight in France, Australia, Brazil, Mexico, Denmark, Italy, Russia. If this looks normal to you, these two young ladies look normal to you, then we have normalized obesity, unfortunately, because both of these young ladies are obese. It is against the law to be overweight in Japan. They have mandated that a man cannot have a waistline that is greater than 33.5 inches. Now, one of the things you have to remember about the Japanese, they're smaller than we are. They're smaller than most Americans. I'm about average height in Japan. I'm a little bit heavy for a Japanese. I'm a little bit broader shouldered than they tend to be. But the Japanese are a lot smaller than we are. My waistline right now is right at 33 inches, somewhere between 32 and 33 inches. So I would be okay in Japan as long as I don't gain any more weight. A woman can't have a waistline larger than 35.4 inches, so women are allowed bigger waists than men are. The World Health Organization considers obesity as one of the top 10 health problems in the world. These are chubby Japanese women. If I showed you normal Japanese women, they're a lot skinnier than this. As you can see, these women are just a little bit chubby. It's not a chubby population, so these women are probably at the edge of being overweight. And I think what they're doing is, they're advertising a water that helps you gain weight. Being underweight is a problem in Japan. Individuals are really, really slender, and they have a difficult time keeping weight on. And I think that's what this is some kind of water supplement that has something in it that allows them to gain weight. And so these chubbier women are advertising the whatever it is. In a new plan to get the children in the United States to exercise, former First Lady Michelle Obama started a school lunch and exercise program called Let's Move. The hope of the program is to get exercise and nutrition information to parents, to improve the quality of food in the schools, to make health foods more affordable and accessible, to focus more on physical education. Among adolescents in the United States, 31.7% are considered obese. In the United States, 68% of the adult population are overweight, and 34% are considered obese. It is estimated that by 2020, that's now, 75% of the adults will be considered overweight or obese. And if you look at this picture, you can see one person of normal size. Everybody else is kind of big. If you can see, this lady's got big arms. This guy in the background is overweight. All these people in the foreground are overweight, except for the blonde over on the right. And who knows, you can only see the top part of her. She may be overweight as well. In 1948, a healthy breakfast consisted of fried eggs, bacon, white toast with margarine, coffee with sugar and fat from the milk bottle. That was a normal breakfast. That's what the doctors told us to eat. While I was growing up, my mother made oatmeal from time to time, but a good breakfast was at least one egg, white toast, some bacon, as many pieces as you could get. She usually fried up a whole package of bacon every morning, and then she used the bacon grease to cook the rest of the food for the rest of the day. But there were eight of us, and everybody would eat whatever they would eat their 2 eggs or 4 pieces of toast and 6 pieces of bacon. And then when we ran out the door, whatever was left over, my mom ate. But my dad ate this kind of a breakfast almost every day of his life. At that time, bacon wasn't that expensive. Not only that, but bacon in the old days had a lot more fat in it than it does today. I can remember opening up a package of bacon and seeing 2 really tiny red strips in there, and the rest of it was just fat. So a lot of times you were eating almost raw fat. It's almost like eating chitlins, like eating raw fat, almost like being somebody from Alaska, one of the natives of Alaska, and eating whale blubber or something. 1 in 4 men age 55 developed heart disease. My dad had heart disease. Of course, he ate this breakfast. This is what he ate in the army. Gave him enough energy to go out and fight the Germans, the Nazis during World War II. That was the idea anyway. So eggs and bacon and toast, that was a normal breakfast. And unfortunately, of course, it clogged everybody's arteries. So in the 1950s, the 1960s, we started having pilots who were flying very expensive jet airplanes, crashing and having heart attacks and crashing. And so the Air Force started a program back in the late 60s. They started monitoring individuals who graduated from the Air Force Academy. And they were trying to determine why they were having heart attacks. And the very first thing we discovered was they had atherosclerosis. In other words, they had hardening of the arteries caused by a buildup of cholesterol in their systems. And while I was in the service for 12 years, we were monitoring these individuals who had graduated from the academy and had become part of this program. So one of the things we were discovering, we're trying to determine what normal cholesterol levels were. In the beginning, I think a normal cholesterol was 300. Then it came down to 250, and now it's at 200, which is kind of interesting. So normals have changed over time, as interesting as that is, as has blood pressure. When I first started in medicine, if you had a blood pressure of 140 over 90, then you're okay. You're probably okay. You're right at the edge of problems. Now, normal blood pressure is 120 over 70 or 60 or something like that. So it's gone down. And the reason is because the normal actually has gone down. Though it changes frequently and from one piece of research to the next, healthy eating consists of consuming the 46 essential nutrients in one form or another. A good rule of thumb is to consume the 5 major food groups in these ratios. You need vegetables. About 30% of your food should come from vegetables, 30% from grains, 20% from fruit, 20% from protein, and you need to get dairy in there someplace. It is essential that it is estimated that 11.3% of the daily calories consumed in the United States are calories from fast food. Of course, you guys don't have to worry about this because there's not a whole lot of fast food on the reservation. Now, actually, there's a junk food tax that people keep talking about. I've been to the a gas station in Saley, and I can tell you that most of the items in that gas station are taxed. There's a lot of junk food in there. Frequent fast food consumption has been shown to cause weight gain. African Americans consume a higher percentage of calories from fast food. This is a higher percentage than are consumed by Hispanic Americans or European Americans, so they're eating a lot of cheeseburgers and French fries and drinking a lot of Cokes. In every age group, obese adults consume the highest percentage of their calories from fast foods. So we eat too many fast foods. And of course, while I was working in Saley, I didn't eat any fast food at all. Well, I guess I did. Anytime I went to Gallup, I would pick up a cheeseburger at either at 509 or Lotta Burger. Good burgers, if you like burgers. Unfortunately, people in the United States do a lot of mindless eating, where we eat to get rid of the food that we have, no matter how much it is. This is a problem with supersizing. I did this 2 days ago. I had eggs. I fried up some eggs. And there were 3 pieces of toast left, so I ate all 3 pieces of toast just to get rid of them. Otherwise, of course, who knows, we probably would have thrown that last slice away or maybe 2 slices away. But I ate all 3 of the slices. Of course, this is a problem with supersizing. This is a problem with large containers. This is a problem when we feel that we must finish the portion that we are given. This is what happened with my wife. When she was a child, they told her that she had to eat everything that her mother cooked for her because her mother loved her, and she wouldn't cook her something that would hurt her. So if they put two helpings of potatoes on her plate, she had to eat all those two helpings before she could leave the table. So she had to eat everything, and she had a problem with her weight as she was going through adolescence. Early dietary habits may have a lifelong pattern that leads to problems in later life. Diet has been implicated in 5 of the 10 leading causes of death: heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, and atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis, of course, is hardening of the arteries due to a buildup of cholesterol. 40 to 45% of the total calories in an average Western diet are consumed through dietary fat. Humans naturally crave fat because of our ancestral feast and famine cycle. This obviously they're in a famine cycle. Our ancestors were far more active than we are today, but we haven't changed our eating patterns to fit our sedentary lifestyle. And as I've been sitting here isolating myself, and it's cold outside here, it's in the 30s. Looks like we're going to have snow this afternoon. But one of the things that has happened is, of course, I wear a smartwatch that tells me how many steps I've taken. I've only taken 2,295 steps today. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. It's 11 o'clock, and I probably won't get my 10,000 steps in. And I've noticed that over the last 3 or 4 days, I haven't gotten my 10,000 steps in. So my sedentary lifestyle, of course, I haven't really reduced my food intake, but I've lost 2 pounds. It's because I stopped drinking Mountain Dew, as weird as that may sound. I decided to do this. I've been thinking about this for a couple months. There's a lot of sugar in Mountain Dew. One every once in a while is probably okay, but drinking as many as I was drinking, that's probably not a good idea. So I've decided that I would stop drinking Mountain Dew. We'll see if my gut goes away. Should be interesting. There are 4 main types of dietary fats: trans fats, saturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, and unsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. Trans fats are created when hydrogen is added to vegetable oil to give it longer shelf life and better texture and taste. It is toxic. The trans fats, they used to put it in potato chips, and so that it tasted better, and of course they could leave the bags on the shelf for a longer period of time. You used to find trans fats in a lot of different things. Then we realized, oh my God, we're poisoning people with all this crap that we're giving them to eat. So they tried to take the trans fats out of a lot of the fast foods, not the fast foods, but the junk foods. So if you look at jerky, or you look at potato chips, or it always tells you how much trans fat is in there. In the old days, lots of trans fats in potato chips, but we've changed. We've decided. Lay's has decided not to do that anymore. But anytime you get an off-brand like Oots or Old Dutch or whatever, if you get an old off-brand of potato chips, look at it and see how much trans fat is in there, and there should be none. If there is any, then that might be a problem. Saturated fats are found in foods made from animals, such as meats, eggs, and milk. We do need saturated fats. This is not a bad thing. We just need to consume them in smaller portions than we probably potentially do. Monounsaturated fats are found in vegetable oils like olive oil and canola oil and peanut oil. Polyunsaturated fats, there's 2 different kinds of polyunsaturated fats. There's omega-6 fatty acids, We find that in corn, soybeans, sesame oil, and safflower oils. And then there's omega-3, and we find this in cold water fish and flax seeds. Now, I'm allergic to fish. I can't eat fish, so I can't get any omega-3s from fish, but I could eat flax seeds and get my omega-3s if I really need to. Not all fats are bad. Trans fats are unhealthy and should be avoided, of course. So look on any packaging, whether they have trans fats in them. If they do, don't buy it. We can make them stop putting that in there if we stop consuming it. Saturated fats aren't as dangerous as trans fats, but should be consumed in moderation, as I said before. Monounsaturated fats, which I just call unsaturated fats, and polyunsaturated fats are actually healthful and should be consumed to give the consumer the feeling of satiety, which can help prevent overeating, reduce cholesterol in the blood, and have an anti-inflammatory effect on the body. So all the monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats you can get, you're actually better off for it. Cholesterol is a waxy substance that is responsible for strong cell walls, myelination of nerve cells, and production of hormones. Cholesterol from our diet is non-essential since the liver manufactures all the cholesterol that our body actually needs. So even if we stop taking in cholesterol completely, we won't have any problem maintaining ourselves. Our bodies aren't going to break down because we don't have enough cholesterol. Animal fats that we eat circulates in the blood as serum cholesterol, and of course, it's taken out of your body in your stool, strangely enough. Serum cholesterol is made up of proteins called lipoproteins. There are 3 types of lipoproteins. There are triglycerides, low-density lipoproteins, and high-density lipoproteins. The low-density lipoproteins carry cholesterol around the body for cells to use. Triglycerides are the form that animal fat is carried around the body. High-density lipoproteins they pick up LDLs and they carry them out of the body in your stool, of course. So the LDL is the bad cholesterol, and HDL is the good cholesterol. So you need as many HDLs in your system as possible. The more HDLs you have, the healthier you are. The more LDLs you have, the more in danger of this stuff accumulating on the cell wall and causing heart disease is very high. Triglycerides, of course, are the animal fats that you consume. Now, normally the triglycerides are taken out of your body. If you exercise a lot, then your triglycerides. And some people have a genetic proclivity for accumulating triglycerides or not getting rid of triglycerides. I can remember when I was working in when I was in the service, especially when I was in the service. Remember, we used to cook with grease. We used to cook with bacon grease. We used to cook with lard, a lot of strange things. Anyway, that put a lot of triglycerides in our system, and some people just can't get rid of it. I was working in Texas when I was in the service, and we had an individual that was a cook, and he had a difficult time with triglycerides. So when we drew his blood and looked at them, it looked like his serum, which is normally clear, his serum was creamy because it had so many triglycerides in it. And he had a really serious problem that needed to be taken care of. He needed to stop, for one thing, he needed to stop testing all the food to make sure it tasted good because he was cooking with too much fat. And eventually, of course, he died of a heart attack. Whoops. During your adolescent years, the puberty, the body is awash with hormones. Cholesterol is a precursor to hormones. So looking at cholesterol until adulthood is contraindicated. You need that cholesterol in your system, and it's okay. You're just splashing with hormones, and you need to create those hormones. And the only way to do that is with cholesterol. In adulthood, nutritionists suggest the individuals maintain select levels of lipids. Total cholesterol should be below 200 milligrams %. LDL should be below 100 milligrams percent. Triglycerides should be below 100 milligrams percent. And HDL should be above 40 milligrams percent. And of course, now we can fractionate this. When I first started in medicine, we could measure total cholesterol, but we couldn't fractionate it into LDL, triglyceride, and HDL. Then we were able to pull out the triglycerides. And so if we gave you a result of your cholesterol, we'd give you a total cholesterol and then a triglycerides. And then we'd give you a cholesterol number. Of course, the cholesterol number was actually the total cholesterol minus the triglycerides. And then, of course, now we're able to fractionate it. I can remember when we first got the test to be able to pull out HDLs, it was really kind of exciting because now, of course, we could give you a total cholesterol, we could give you a triglyceride, we could give you a cholesterol level, we could give you an LDL level, and we could give you an HDL level. So that was 5 different numbers that we could give you. Some people maintain an unhealthy lifestyle, smoking, being physically inactive, diet high in cholesterol and saturated fats, probably not the best idea in the world. Individuals with an unhealthy lifestyle have increased levels of LDLs and decreased levels of HDLs. Oddly, tobacco will make you accumulate more LDLs in your system, and it reduces the number of HDLs in your system. So smoking is not a really very good idea. Healthy individuals protect themselves from heart disease by elevating their HDL levels, by eating certain polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, by consuming vitamin E, by consuming a low in saturated fat diet, and by consuming a high fiber diet. And the reason you want to eat a lot of fiber is because the fiber will pull that cholesterol out of your system. Not the HDLs, but the LDLs. 12% of women and 31% of men have low HDL. While cholesterol is partially controlled by heredity, diet and lifestyle play a major role in the amount of cholesterol in the individual's system. This may have something to do with lack of exercise. It does have something to do with lack of exercise. That's the lifestyle we're talking about. The good news is that more and more people are getting their cholesterol checked, and with maintenance, the levels are declining. Not only that, but now we have medication that we can give people to lower their cholesterol level. I take it. I take a cholesterol medication. It's a statin, and it pulls the cholesterol out of my system. It's a medication. Of course, somebody with high cholesterol level, we can treat with a statin or with some other substance to pull that stuff out of your system. High cholesterol levels have been implicated in 1/3 of all cancer deaths in the United States. Saturated fats found in red meats and other animal products have been found to be the culprit in breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colorectal cancer. Fruits and vegetables help fight cancers by providing vitamin A, which is beta-carotene. Another name for it is beta-carotene, which helps maintain the immune system to prevent cancerous growth. I take beta-carotene every day in my vitamin. I have a multivitamin that I take. It's got beta-carotene in it, and it turns my urine dark yellow or to orange, as interesting as that is. I know that sounds weird to talk about what color somebody's urine is, but if it's really clear, it means that you're drinking a lot of water, and you're drinking a lot of water, it's running through your system. If you've been outside sweating and you've only urinated once or twice a day, your urine will be the color of mustard. Why is all this important? Because you can look at your urine and you can tell what's going on. If it's cloudy, it means you potentially have a urinary tract infection. And of course, this is one of the jobs that I had. I did urinalysis. So I got to see lots and lots and lots and lots and lots, millions of containers of urine. And you could usually tell by looking or by smelling what was going on with the individual. Urine usually has the odor of whatever you've been eating. So if you've been eating If you've been eating asparagus, of course, it smells like asparagus. If you've been eating cauliflower, it kind of smells like cauliflower or broccoli, whatever. Usually whatever's running through your system, you can smell it. Even onions, you can smell onions in urine. Selenium can also, this is something nobody else will tell you because most people don't see that much urine, okay? Selenium can also help, but only if the individual has a selenium deficiency. Vitamin C and E also help protect the body from open-ended molecules called free radicals. One of the things that I'm doing right now is instead of drinking Mountain Dew, I'm drinking lemonade. And I make the lemonade with half a lemon and a can of seltzer water, and then the packet of Crystal Light lemonade. So every time I take a drink, which I think I'll do right now, I'm getting a lot of vitamin C because lemons have a lot of vitamin C, and I'm using lemons in my drink. The most common multiple chronic conditions are hypertension and diabetes, hypertension and heart disease, hypertension and cancer. It is thought that the increase in the levels of obesity may have something to do with this trend. Low fat or fat-free yogurt is higher in calcium. Oh, we're talking about superfoods now. One of the superfoods is low fat or fat-free yogurt. It's high in calcium. It has, what else? It has protein. It has potassium and other nutrients. It is sometimes reinforced with plant stanols and probiotics for healthy guts. So there you go. You can put all that good stuff in your system. I've had kidney stones, so I need to stay away from dairy products. I had kidney stones when I was 28 years old, and every time I get stupid and start consuming dairy products, I will get it'll make me sick. That's not true. It doesn't make me sick. What it does, it gives me kidney stones, and of course, kidney stones are very painful. Anyways, back in the 90s, when I was working in Oklahoma, I decided that I would eat yogurt and cereal, and so I'd put cereal inside yogurt, and I'd eat that, and it was really good. The problem was, of course, I developed kidney stones because of the dairy product. So I need to stay away from dairy products. I do have problems, of course. So kidney stones are one of them. One of the things I need to stay away from dairy products in order not to develop more kidney stones. Eggs are nutritious. We're still talking about superfoods. Eggs are nutritious, economical, and a good way to add protein to your diet. Eggs contain 12 vitamins and minerals, including choline, which aids in brain development and cognitive functioning. Really kind of weird. The Germans say that women can eat all the eggs that they want, but men should only have one egg a week, and that's because of the cholesterol, of course. Now we know that the cholesterol isn't the vitamins you get from eggs are far more important than the cholesterol that might build up in your system. Another superfood are nuts. They are a good source of protein. They have heart-healthy fats, polyunsaturated fats. They have fiber, and they have antioxidants in them. In small doses, nuts can help lower cholesterol and promote weight loss. Kiwis, oddly enough, these strange little things that taste like gooseberries. Kiwi is one of the most nutritionally dense foods known to man. One large kiwi contains a full day's supply of vitamin C and is also a good source of potassium, fiber, vitamin A, and vitamin E. So kiwis are good for you. The problem is they're strong. So anytime I eat a kiwi, my tongue gets numb. It burns my tongue. Quinoa is one of the healthiest grains on the planet. 1 cup of quinoa is high in protein, fiber, zinc, iron, vitamin E, and that infamous selenium that we were talking about before. It can help control weight and lower your risk of diabetes and heart disease. Quinoa is a little bit smaller than rice. You can see what it looks like. It grows in Peru, oddly enough. It's a food that the Incans ate a lot of. And then we discovered it again back in the 70s. It wasn't very popular. They started growing more of it down in Peru. And now, of course, it's a superfood that just about everybody recognizes. It tastes, well, it doesn't have much of a taste. It's like rice. I mean, it doesn't really taste like anything. It tastes like whatever you put with it. My wife is big on quinoa, but it's kind of hard to cook with. And I'm not sure why. Beans are full of insoluble fiber, which lowers your cholesterol, and soluble fiber, which makes you feel full and cleans out your colon. And that's a good thing. It's low-fat protein. It has carbohydrates, magnesium, and potassium. Most beans do. In Africa, a lot of the individuals, if you go to Africa, not a whole lot of fat people over there. But if you go to Africa, they eat a lot of beans. They tend to eat a lot of beans. I had a colleague when I was teaching at Fort Belknap. She had been in Tanzania for like 30 years. And she came back and she didn't eat any meat, but she ate a lot of beans, and that was her thing. And she was, of course, real tall and skinny, like a lot of white people are tall and skinny, but she was that way. Another superfood is salmon. It's rich in omega-3 fatty acids. It's got protein and iron in it. For a meat, it is low in saturated fats, which is good. The American Heart Association suggests that people eat heart-healthy salmon at least twice a week. Of course, I can't do that because I'm allergic to fish. And the reason I'm allergic to fish, it's not that I'm actually allergic to fish. The problem is that I have gout. And we'll talk about gout in a minute. I think we're going to talk about gout. Anyway, I have gout. And gout makes your joints swell. Because it's a buildup of uric acid, and you have to stay away from purines, and there are purines in all fish. So I've got problems with some of my joints, and I was trying to take BioOsteoFlex, and of course, BioOsteoFlex has shark calcium in it or something. It has something with shark in it. I can't eat Caesar salad because it's got some kind of fish oil in it. Anyway, I need to stay away from fish. Another superfood are the cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli is one of them. Broccoli is the green plant over on your left. Cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, radishes. In my house, we eat a lot of cauliflower. We eat a moderate amount of cabbage and broccoli, but we eat a lot of crucifers. These vegetables are high in vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, and fiber. Spinach, of course, that's spinach. I guess it's supposed to be kale. Anyway, cruciferous vegetables. Crucifers. Another healthy food are foods with a lot of beta carotene in it. Anything that's orange, like carrots and sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are part of the dark orange vegetable family, which are orange because of their beta carotene. They're high in vitamin A. They're rich in potassium, which reduces your bone loss. They're low in sodium, which lowers your blood pressure. So sweet potatoes are good for you. I don't like them because they taste too sweet. I'll eat carrots, but I'm not much of a sweet potato guy. I love carrots, but not sweet potatoes. Another superfood are berries. They're high in water and fiber, and they're low in calories. They help you feel full, control blood sugar. Berries are full of phytonutrients and antioxidants. Berries satisfy your sweet tooth with a fraction of the calories and the fat that most of your fats, sweet things have. Weight control has 4 control factors. Heredity, some people have higher metabolic rates, which change the amount of food that they can consume. Younger and more active individuals have a higher metabolic rate. Fat has a lower metabolic rate than muscle. Men have 10 to 20% more muscle than women do, something that we have to remember. Weight set point. The human body is a well-balanced instrument that takes in and burns calories within 1% of its needs every year. Because of this, whether we exercise or watch our diet or not, we tend to fluctuate around a certain weight, and this is known as our weight set point. And as you can see, this is Seth Rogen. This is Seth Rogen before he started exercising, and he was smoking a lot of dope back then. He's Canadian, and he was smoking. Oh, that doesn't have anything to do with it. He is Canadian, and he did smoke a lot of dope, but that one thing doesn't have anything to do with the other. As soon as he slowed down he made a movie. I can't remember what it was, and he was supposed to slender down, and he went on an exercise program and whatnot, and stopped smoking pot. Galifianakis, I guess is his name. Studies where normal weighted people ate an excess of calories a day showed that their bodies tried to maintain its set point by increased incidental physical activity. In other words, because you were taking in more calories than you needed, then you naturally moved around more. Studies where overweight people cut their calorie intake drastically showed that their bodies maintained their weight set point by slowing down their metabolism. And of course, this is a problem if you're a little bit overweight and you're trying to lose weight. One of the things that happens when you go on a diet and go onto an exercise program, it slows down your weight loss. And the reason is because your metabolism slows down at the same time. In a study from World War II, a researcher from Minnesota experimented with calorie levels with volunteers to discover what would happen to Europeans if the war drug on. And of course, most of these volunteers, really kind of curious, they were conscientious objectors. And because they were conscientious objectors, they agreed to do things that would help the war effort. And one of them was this program. Really kind of fascinating. They went from 3,500 calories a day to 1,570 calories a day. They dropped from 150, this is the average, of course. They dropped from 157 to 115 pounds. The guy on the right is the normal-sized one. And the guy on the reduced calories is the guy on the left. They went down from 157 to 115 pounds in 6 months. Their heart rates dropped from 55 beats per minute to 35 beats per minute. Their bowel movements decreased by once per week. So whereas they were having a bowel movement a day, when they were normal weighted, when they were consuming fewer calories, of course, their bowel movements reduced to once per week. I know people don't like to talk about bowel movements, but it's one of those things that has to do with health. If you're constipated, you're not having frequent or adequate bowel movements, this can be a really serious problem. If you're having too many bowel movements a day, if your stool is loose and if you've got diarrhea, this is really serious because you're losing a lot of fluid when you have your diarrheic attacks. So these are things that people don't talk about. We don't talk about our bowel movements, and of course that's something that has to do with health, with being healthy or not being healthy. Why don't we stop right here, and we'll pick it up right here when we in the next lecture. I don't want to overburden you. It's been over an hour, so let's go ahead and stop right here. If I can. There it is. Okay, we're going to stop right here. And I'll see you guys later on in the week.